Welcome to this debate. The motion is something about aging and technology. This might, yeah.
We would like to ask everyone to put their mobile phones on silent, and if they have stuff to comment about the debate, keep it to the end. Keep it for the end, right? Don't comment on the debate. Don't do sounds. Don't make sounds. Don't make sounds during the debate.
And that being said, it is my great pleasure to invite Mr. George.
Ladies and gentlemen, what we need to do today is to analyze the perspective of the individual that will create something, not that will just revolutionize the medical field, but that will overhaul the society as we know it. And we need to know whether that thing will be good for him or not. And that's exactly what we're going to do. Now, moving on to my first point. From the perspective of the scientist, would I gain any benefit from this? Because we see that in society, we have created lots of social constructs because we have the fear of death. We have created countless institutions and ideas that try to relinquish humanity from the fear of death. And the most powerful one is religion. What we're saying is that in the context in which an individual, such as our scientist, would create such a thing, he would draw hate from such institutions. Because it intrinsically challenges their dogmas. It intrinsically challenges the idea that God created humanity, so like life, it's a new thing. It's a thing before the afterlife. It's like a prequel. And we're saying that in the context in which such a scientist would create such medicine, we're saying that the institutions will feel revolt. They will feel that their dogmas are being challenged by a man. And because of that, they will try and target him. They will try and discredit him. They will try to make people bash him and see that specific thing should not be used because it's not natural. We're saying that our individual would draw hate from institutions that have more power than him, and he would have no essential means to retaliate. The second point, we're saying that in the context in which we create such a new thing, we're going to create lots and lots of controversy in society. Sure, at first the people are going to be happy. The people are going to be thrilled that we cannot age anymore, and yes, because of that, we will diminish the chance of dying from natural causes. But once we take a look further and the consequences of that, we're going to see that people are going to try and hold up that power, that people are going to start blaming others for something that they cannot afford, and they will feel that they are being denied the chance to live an immortal life. That will create controversy. And who will they blame? Who will they blame for the social inequality and for the fact that they cannot afford such a medicine, or that medicine cannot get to them? Well, they would rather much blame the individual that created such a context and made them even lower in the face of the society. Because of that, we're seeing that the people are going to start blaming our scientists as well for creating something that would be wrongfully used and would create controversy inside the society. Now, let's take a look at how this medicine might actually happen to be created. We're essentially seeing that this scientist might be working in a field, or I don't know, with other scientists for a corporation or for a government. And we're seeing that in the context in which he would create such a thing, that government would try to take advantage of him. That government would try and use his product without him knowing. And if that government doesn't do it, there will be other entities with much higher power than him that would want to have such a powerful thing. Because of that, we're seeing that our scientist would be targeted in a second round for his product. For him being the only one that has been able to create it, he will become a massively strategical value for countless entities that have lots of power. And because of that, we're seeing that his life would be at times at risk. Yes, ma'am.
Well, if that happens, we believe that he can always sue those governments and companies. Aside from that, do you think that this measure would add any value to human life?
We're essentially saying no, that this value would not add any value to human life, because it would rather make individuals that have more power gain even more, and make the people that have no power at all be even lower in the class of the society. But I'll get to that in my second. What we're saying is we're going to take a look at Nikola Tesla, which essentially at a certain point had the opportunity and might have created something that was just as revolutionary. We're essentially saying that Nikola Tesla could created something that would beam energy wireless. What he did was destroy it, because he realized the fact that there would be entities that would use it wrong, and that would try to take advantage of him for using it. And in that context in which that thing was known to have been created. We're saying is that what Nikola Tesla did is the right thing. Now let's take a look at that scientist. If he created that product, what would he be able to do with it? Well, he can either keep it hidden, in which case if it was ever found out, he would be bashed by the public opinion a lot for withholding something that for them would be like, you know, withholding their life, withholding the idea that they can be immortal. He would be bashed for keeping such a thing away from humanity. He could sell that thing. And when he sells that thing, he will also be bashed because there will be individuals that cannot afford it. There will be individuals that, because of him selling that, they will feel that they are being discriminated against. They are given no chance to have a full life. Because of that, again, he will be bashed. Or lately, he could, or in the end, he could just destroy it. And we're saying that that's the best case scenario because the society is not yet ready for something like this. Now, moving on to my second point, it's about the moral duty that the scientist holds towards society. First of all, let's picture how this world will, no, thank you. Imagine your boss. Imagine that you live in a company, that you work for a company. Now imagine that nowadays you can work and be promoted when that respective CEO passes away. We're saying that now imagine that that CEO never passes away. What are you going to do next? We're seeing that there will be individuals that will be holding most of the power inside of society as it happens now. But more on that, because this medicine will be available for them, they will be able to hold that power for an unlimited period of time. And we're seeing that context, no thank you, it's protected time, but we're seeing that context where there will be individuals that would be able to afford this and would be able, up to a certain point, because they hold so much power, to streamline changes inside of the society that fit them. Because we're seeing that in the context in which an individual that has a lot of power dies, we're seeing that when someone else takes over for him, they have a new perspective. They have something new that might bring a change of how that power is used. But in that context in which that CEO has access to a medicine that will enable him not to die, we're seeing there will be no need in order for that individual to change that perspective, or more so, he will not be tempted to let his power go away. And we're seeing that context, that society will no longer function on organic change. We're seeing that society would rather function and be streamlined by the ideas of certain individuals. Because of that, we're seeing that our scientist has a moral duty towards society not to let it happen in that way. And because of that, we're seeing that it's best for him to destroy that in order not to be bashed, in order to uphold his moral duty. Thank you.
Can I borrow time from someone who's doing it? Okay, it's my great pleasure to introduce Helene with the first piece from the opposition side.
Între timp, nu caut să ai pe stopon, că cumva mă și să ies din aplicație. Scuze. Și scuze sălii și arbitului și oamenilor în general.
Vrei pe ăsta?
Ui, Luci. Sau, da. Da, cu ăsta am mai lucrat. Ok. As a scientist, we believe that you have made an unspoken pledge to use all your time and the resources that you put into doing research to find things and to discover things that better the quality of life for the whole human race. We believe that's what scientists generally tend to do, to discover things that improve the quality of life for the whole human race or that help the human race advance in any way. We believe that not aging is definitely under that category. We believe that as a scientist, this is exactly the kind of thing that you strive for. We believe this is exactly the kind of thing that you should not be destroying. I'm going to have two bigger points in my speech. Firstly, about why this is huge for the scientist as a person, and as a researcher, and how this is a great opportunity for him. Secondly, about how this improves the quality of life of human beings. Oh, and thirdly, it won't be a big point, but it will be an important point why we believe it is illegitimate and immoral for for a single person to make such an important decision like destroying the serum that can stop aging for all of humanity. Okay, but before I go there, rebuttal. Firstly, religion. Religious institutions or conservative institutions will revolt against this because it's unnatural and it's controversial. Whatever, okay? Like seriously, we should seriously be challenging religious institutions and conservative institutions, and we've been doing that through the ages. They've started to uphold slavery and other stuff, and we challenge them and eventually we change them. The religion will change on this as well, and if it doesn't change, that's fine. We still need to challenge them. Just the fact that they'll get revolted is not an argument in itself. Also, it's not like you destroy this notion of life as a prequel to afterlife, because people will still die. They'll just look good when they'll die and they'll be young. It's not like we're stopping death altogether. We're just stopping aging and all death related to aging. There's a lot of other stuff that makes people die, like cancer.
Sure.
I don't know. Okay, moving on. And your better point. The fact that some people can't afford it, and this will create inequality, and this will lead to a lot of injustice in society. Okay, yes, basically this point says that inequality sucks, and that being rich gives you a lot more opportunity than being poor. Yes, it's sad, but it happens. It happens with a lot of stuff, not just with the aging serum. Like, I know, being able to afford education for your children is a huge advantage that richer people have over poor people. What we need to do as society is not to stop discovering good things just because some people will not afford them, and this will create inequality. We need to find a way to redistribute stuff. We need to find a way to make these things accessible for poor people as well, so we can all advance as a society, not just destroy everything that's good just because it's expensive and some people can't afford it. No, thank you. Okay, moving on. Why this is good for the scientists? We believe this is a great opportunity as a scientist for 3 reasons. Firstly, imagine the shitloads of money that you'll be making if you discover the serum that stops aging. Seriously, this is a gold mine. Secondly, acknowledgement as a researcher. Being the person who discovered this will probably put you into every history book. It's probably one of the major achievements of the last, I know, at least 2 centuries. This person will be incredibly important. I believe that as a scientist, it's a great thing if you discover something that big. You really don't want to destroy your biggest achievement. Thirdly, it's great for science in itself. Because having this serum not only allows you to, like, I know, have more researchers because they won't age anymore and allow researchers to spend more time researching, but also you can use this serum to extrapolate other stuff, like, I don't know, maybe stop aging tissues and the diseases that relate to this. It's a great opportunity for scientists to use this to further discover stuff and improve science in itself. And for the sake of science, because you're a scientist, you really shouldn't destroy it. Okay, but moreover, we think that as a scientist, you strive to discover stuff that improves the quality of life of people. And the next 3 minutes of my speech will be about how this greatly improves the quality of life of people. But before I go there, I'll take one from closing. Go.
So will everybody have access to this magic formula of yours?
To the amount to which saying that everybody has access to other stuff in general in society, yes. So the answer is probably no. Not everybody will have access if society is as it is. That's not a reason not to do it. We should be thriving to achieve some kind of scheme, either if you go the left wing redistribution, either if you go right wing charity or whatever scheme, in order to make these things accessible, not stop things just because they're great and expensive. Okay, moving on. Quality of life. A, being old sucks, really. You're weaker, you have bad eyesight, it's increasingly difficult for you as you get old to do stuff, to achieve your goals. Like, you're uglier, imagine getting laid, it's probably a lot less probable if you get old. It's very important, it's increasingly more difficult to do stuff that you want to achieve. Therefore, your quality of life diminishes, because we think that the value of life and the quality of the life that you live increases proportionally with the amount of goals that you can achieve, goals that you set for yourself, and the amount of stuff that you can do in general. Being old sucks. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. I shouldn't be spending more time on this point. B, it stops all aging doiseases. There's a lot of diseases that are specifically related to old age. Diseases that make you incapable of doing even the most basic stuff in life. Like, I don't know, moving a teaspoon from your cup to your mouth, or remembering the name of your husband, or stuff like that. We believe that your life, when you suffer from one of these diseases, sucks a lot. We believe that stopping this is a great success, and therefore a great thing to do for humanity. Thirdly, We believe that the fact that you have an ETA on when you will get old and when you will die of great age is a great restriction on you as a human being. And it harms your liberty of choice of doing whatever you want to do in your life. There's a life cycle that you must follow. When you're young, you must study, and then you must work and focus on your career so you can have the amount of money to support your family. Then you focus on your family, and then when you're done with that, you're old and you can't do anything. So when you're young, you don't have time. When you're middle-aged, you don't have. When you're young, you don't have money. When you're middle-aged, you don't have time. When you're old, you have all the time and the money in the world, but you're too damn old to do anything. We believe that's a great restriction on you. Like, you focus on stuff not because you want to focus on it. For example, when you focus on career, you focus on it because you have to. Imagine the liberty that you will have when that will no longer be the case. You no longer have a life cycle. You can do whatever you want. Like, after you've amounted somewhere, you can spend 5 years traveling the world as a 20-year-old, because even though you're actually like 80, and do everything that you actually wanted to do and cross all those things off the bucket list. And lastly, on the moral point, if Jorge wants to talk about morality, we believe that destroying this serum basically amounts to murder, mass murder. Basically killing everyone that will ever die of old age and will have had access to this serum. We're not saying that as a scientist you might not have strong personal feelings about why this is wrong. Maybe you're a religious scientist, I don't know. What I'm saying is that it is illegitimate for a single individual to make such a decision. This is something that should be presented to society, this is something that should be open to society, something that should be discussed in global society, and then society should take this decision, not you as a scientist. That is not your role. Your role is to discover stuff, and then people will discuss what to do with that stuff. Thank you.
Speech, I'd like to invite again Nita for the second speech of the
Basically, what Shannon said in trying to refute our points about inequality, about the chance of this type of medicine to spread more and more, and about the possibility of more people to actually have this, was based on the fact that maybe in the future we will be able to redistribute things, we will be able to do things, and so on and so forth. But the issue is that the more revolutionary and the more important a piece of medicine, a piece of evolution is, the smaller the possibility to actually make it available for everyone. For instance, take AIDS medicine. AIDS medicine is not something extremely revolutionary, but even though it is not, we still have patent legislation that does not let more than half of the population of the earth to have it, just because some companies want to profit of that more and more, and basically people are suffering because of that. We believe that are great. Even though in an ideal world these things will, this medicine will reach everyone, in our world we believe the risk is too big for it to be able only to first. Sir? No, thank you, sir. But first of all, let's take a look from the perspective of the scientist. What will happen if you do something revolutionary? Because we believe that there is a nuance here. There is one thing to do something revolutionary that's purely a scientific revolution, because in this context there are no morals involved and people will not bash you. Maybe some companies will bash you and so on and so forth. So, and most likely you will get money and so on and so forth. That in this particular position, you are basically changing the way humans live. Human will live longer. The economic context will change. The way, as you said, the way people behave will change, and will have massive changes. So from this perspective, the gains you'll have will not be weighted by the fact that you'll be massively bashed by a religious institution. Yes, we are, as you said, we want to tackle conservatism by the idea that if you are one scientist, you will not be able to tackle that. You will be attacked, you will be a target by religious institutions, by conservatism, and not only by that. You'll be bashed by companies. Imagine the fact that, as you said, the main cause of that in most of the countries in the earth is stroke. In the context in which you will not have issues like stroke, which is caused by aging, basically a lot of the revenue of pharma companies will be gone, because they will not be able to produce and they will not have the demand for those products. In this context, it will be a great pressure on you to not have that product or to give that product away. Moreover, we believe that in the real world, you will not just be a scientist that lives hidden somewhere and creates this medicine. It will be known that you have developed this medicine. You will most likely work in a governmental lab or in a company and so on and so forth. So basically, it will be a known fact. In the context in which it is a known fact,
Sir.
and if something is, no, thank you, sir, revolutionary, basically the people will want to acquire that first. In the same way it happened with the nuclear bomb. When somebody invented the nuclear bomb and the technology to create nukes, which was very important to geopolitics in the beginning of 20th century, those scientists were not leave to roam freely in US university. They were kept in the Manhattan Project and forced to work only from them. We don't actually know those people very well, even though they revolutionized the way we see chemistry and physics, because they were kept under, kept there because there was a high risk that somebody can put the hand on that. And we believe that the same thing will happen here. We believe that the government will have knowledge of the fact that you create that, and most likely the government will actually want to use and to use the medicine in front of you. And this brings me to the following point. Actually, yes, sir.
Sir, on one hand, you're telling us that this will be used by a handful of people, which will be ultra rich, but on the other hand, pharma companies will lose their profits because nobody's going to suffer from strokes anymore. You're contradicting yourself.
No, there are two situations. Either it will be kept by a small amount of people, context in which you will have majorly no benefits as scientists, people will not know of you, will not be highly paid, and most likely you will just be controlled by government, so there's not a major benefit you are getting about that. On the other hand, if it goes on the market and it's viral, you'll be bashed massively and somebody will want to acquire that and so on and so forth. Now, going to the equality, because there are three nuances of inequality that we have seen in this context. On one hand, there is economical inequality. I've explained you how in every moment when you create something new, a medicine or something like that, you will have inevitably inequality. But we are saying that this doesn't mean, as Shano said, that we shouldn't have evolution. That's okay. But there is a difference here, because this product is truly revolutionary, and we believe that it will be highly expensive. And now, face it, it's something that saves you from dying in most of the cases. We believe that the price will be massive because the demand will be massive, and people will be able to ask for large amounts of money. We believe that the issue of inequality will be very, very high. So from this context, we believe that inequality will be big. Moreover, we have sort of social inequality, because in the context in which a government will acquire that product, there is a fair chance that it will not distribute to the entire population, and they will not want to use that product massively, because there is a fair chance that, as I'll explain further on, the situation, the economical context of that country could fade away, or something like that. So basically, we are granting a lot of power to the limited amount of people. The difference between a normal medicine and this type is that this type of medicine actually gives you a massive boost of not aging at all and gives you massive benefits for you as an individual. So from this perspective, we believe that there is a difference, there is a nuance between normal evolution in medicine and this thing. And now, this brings me to the last point. No, thank you, sir. Actually analyze what will happen in a society if we actually have no aging. First of all, we believe that we'll have less innovation. Innovation comes in the context in which you have no new people that enter a certain domain. But in the context in which you have people that don't age and that still keep their position in companies and that do not have willingness to innovate, because usually innovation comes and you have a fresh perspective and you make new studies and so on and so forth, innovation will be toned down. Moreover, innovation comes in the context in which you know that you have a limited lifespan, you'll work faster and basically you'll create innovation at a higher rate. In the moment in which, as Shano said, you can spend 20 years in a vacation, basically we believe that there will be a lot of individuals that will lose their focus and will lose their economic value that they have. And this is the actual issue. We believe that there will be less evolution in society and we'll have more stagnation in politics. Imagine that you have politicians that in the parliament have tens and tens and tens, stay for even 10 and 20 years in the parliament. Imagine that those people will still remain there because they have an image and because society is sometimes inherently conservative, and this will bring no change to social trends. It will basically tone down the evolution of society on areas that will be much more important than medicine. We believe that yes, we'll have an improvement in medicine in certain areas. On the other hand, on evolution, even in medicine, in certain diseases and in certain areas, we'll have less and less evolution regarding pollution and so on and so forth. But from an economic perspective, this is wrong and this is bad. It will socially challenge, it will be worse for younger people, or real younger people, to evolve in society. And from this perspective, we believe that actually you are harming the society when you do that. We agree with Shanu, you have a moral duty as a scientist when you create something, but you have to weigh on if this is beneficial or not. In today's context, it will be a massive disturbance in society. So for yourself and for the society, this should not go. Thank you.
I would like to invite Ms. Bianca Puna and the side of the
Ready? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We believe that people feel good when they are young. They are happy, they enjoy life. We believe that a society of young people is a happy society, a society that feels good and feels confident in doing a lot of stuff, in achieving a lot, and we believe that this is what we as society and these famous scientists should strive for, and this is what the debate of today is. We've seen that during time people have been trying to cheat aging or death. We have like the pharmaceutical companies that produce anti-aging solutions. We have seen people trying to eat healthier in order to stay or look younger because they just enjoy this state. They feel more confident, and when feeling confident and feeling good about yourself, you feel like you can achieve everything. And we believe that this is a huge advantage of having this anti-aging serum. Now, I'm going to have 5 points in my speech today. I'm going to tell you the perspective of the scientist and why we believe that he's not going to be doomed in today's society if he does that. I'm going to talk about the quality of life, and we believe that this should be the main focus. And if the government sides wants to win this debate, they should bring us a more tangible harm than the fact that there will be social inequality, a disadvantage and a harm that we're fighting today on a whole lot of levels. And we believe that by having a younger society and by having more resources and energy, we can actually improve social inequality. I'm going to talk about social inequality and about economics. Now, we've heard a lot about the fact that there will be a lot of backlash against the scientists from religious groups, and it will be horrible for them, so therefore he should destroy the serum. We believe that yes, some people will bash you and will be against it because they just want to be old and wrinkled and die in misery. Some people will be extremely happy with it and they will back you and support you against all the religious bashers that are going to come after you and try to put you in chains and burn you down because you just destroyed the natural course of life. So we believe that this is not going to be all that detrimental to him. Moreover, we're talking about the scientists. Most often than not, these people don't give a shit about religion. They care about science and about advances. So that from his point of view, his personal point of view, the fact that religious groups are going to disagree with him or attack him will not be that important. We believe that he's going to have backers, and that will be fine. And then we talk about, people who created the nuclear weapons and they were kept captive and not able to do whatever they want. It was a military action. I mean, I cannot believe we're actually comparing it to that. This scientist is not going to be jailed or put in some fancy room in order to work for a government just because he discovered something great. Moving on to the quality of life. So, Shannon has told you how being old sucks and how we would like to improve quality for these people, and we hear that there's less innovation because we need new people in fields. That's true, but stopping aging doesn't mean we're not going to get pregnant and produce babies and have new people come in new fields and make sure that everything else is going to evolve in the natural course of life. We heard a lot about the fact that there will be stagnation, especially in politics. From the first speaker, not right now, we heard a lot about crazy CEOs who will never step down. Have you heard about term limits? I mean, we're still going to have that. CEOs do not get out from the leadership of a company because they get old or they die. They just get out because they lose power. Or some of them do that because they get old and they die. But there are other ways to throw them down. And before I move on to inequality, closing.
Right, madam, but dictators don't have an end term, right? So on the very same principle, they will still be there for the rest of their aging.
Yeah, because, in dictatorships, it's going to be worse having one dictator living 200 years and being a dictator rather than having 5 dictators living 40 years and having a dictatorship and having the entire Middle East being a sucky area on earth. We don't see how that's a reason not to do this. Now, about taxes and inequality. We acknowledge the fact that this will create inequality, socially, economically, and we believe that this is obviously a harm that exists in today's society. But look, our choice is to have social inequality on a handful of levels, and be wrinkled and old and miserable, or have this and have a fraction of society benefiting from this resource, being young, being able to innovate in a lot of fields, being able to fight and discover treatments for all kinds of diseases, and improve society as a whole. And we believe that just because we have inequality, and this will also create an area where we can have inequality, but because we have the measures to control it and to make sure that we can reduce inequality, it doesn't mean that we should not do it. And they talk about AIDS cure, because some people die of AIDS because they are poor. Should we cure AIDS cure just because we have inequality? We don't think so. So we're still expecting some harm on side government from this measure, except for the fact that economics will stagnate, because you're going to have a lot of, I don't know, a younger population and more young people working. That's going to make economics stagnate some. Now, we believe that at the end of the day, what you should take into account is that this will improve quality of life. And this is something everybody strives for. And we believe that scientists have this as their primary goal. And before I move on, please.
Okay, let's say everything you said was true. We can all afford it. And in the context in which the individuals in the power would have lots of people not aging, what would be the incentive of them allowing those people to have kids anymore, for example?
How can they stop us from having kids? I mean, somehow government assimilates this measure as a form of dictatorship, and we're expecting closing to explain this to us and then take a POI and let us prove that it will never happen. So at the end of the day, you're going to have a society of younger people, that they will enjoy their quality of life and they will make the choices they want to. They will not slack for 40 years afterwards because, you know, and economics will stagnate as they try to portray it. They will still work because they want to, and when they want to, and they will still have to work because they need to eat and they need money. We're saying that because we have aging nowadays, it imposes on us a natural course of life, of an order in which to do things, even though you wouldn't want to do those things, or you don't need to do those things in that specific order, and that inflicts on our liberty to enjoy life. And if life is not to be enjoyed, and I don't know why we're here, why we're debating, or why we're even alive, I think we should all be old and miserable and die alone. Thank you.
Let's open the second half in the debate. I think like that.
One second. Scusi.
Non vorrei altro.
No, got it. This is not a debate about youth being amazing, old people are awful, being young is the greatest thing in the world. This is a debate that creates a miraculous potion that will cost thousands of money, in which only the oligarchs and the very rich people are going to afford, and it's going to create chaos when talking about society. This debate should focus more about the effect that this medicine would have on the society. We're not going to have a society of happy young people, as team opposition is trying to portray. What we're going to have, I'm going to explain in my own speech, in the points that are following, right? First of all, let's talk a little bit about the dehumanizing process on 3 levels. Let's talk a little bit about the scientist. Sure. First of all, we say that in the moment when you discover something that revolutionary, what you become is not a human being anymore. You become the puppeteer of governments. You become the puppeteer of pharmaceutical companies that would want to steal your patent. You become the puppeteer of oligarchs from dictatorship that want to have your medicine because of the fact that it costs a lot and they value that much, being not having the possibility of dying. Right. Second point in here, we say that in the moment in which you create something that is available only for a small portion of individuals, what you create is frustration at the level of society. Frustration because me, as an individual that cannot afford a life-saving medicine, I won't be able to save my life, and my life will value less than the life of somebody that has that amount of money in order to buy the medicine. So we're not talking about we're talking about an extremely high-priced medicine that only really rich people can afford. No, thank you, sir. Now, about poor people and what is going to be their feeling about this medicine, right? the reaction of poor people would be not only frustration, but would be bashing that particular scientist, because it has created a possibility of a long-lasting life only for the people that have the money to buy life. So what we're putting in that moment is a price on life, but a price on life that only really rich people can afford. In that moment, we're not creating a society of happy people that desire to live long. We're creating a society of frustrated people that desire to live long, but don't have the possibility to do it. And the other society, the other part of the society, of people that can afford it and will have the possibility to stay in their positions of power for how long they want, because as they have agreed, in the moment when you live long, you don't have accessibility. No, thanks, sir. You don't have accessibility to diseases that develop with the age. Now, talking a little bit about the quality of life, and not even this will increase. We say that in the moment in which you know that you're going to be young for the rest of your life, the reaction that you're going to be is, I'm not going to care about my health anywhere. I'm not going to care about my health anywhere. Why precisely? Because in the moment in which I know that my body will stay young, I won't have an incentive to care about myself. And I won't have an incentive to care about my career anyway, because I know that I have all the time in the world in order to develop the things that I once wanted. So what we say is, what we're creating in this moment are people that don't really think on the future perspective, because they think that they have all the future perspective in the world. And we say that it is problematic to create this kind of a generation of people in the moment in which our aim is to create not only innovation, but having people responsible for what they do, and having people calculate their life, not being plafonated about the things that they have all the time in the world to develop themselves. Second point in here about science and how are we creating an amazing image regarding science. No, we say that we are creating an image of science that first of all is accessible only to the ones that afford, but more on that. We say that science, when it first appeared, it was addressed to people and in order to save life. What we change in the, no thank you sir, what we change in the perspective of science nowadays is that we're making something really exclusivist. We are creating a club of people that can access science, but more of this, what we're saying is that even if you're talking about science, you're creating plafonation, because you won't have the people's support for the science, and science on its own as an entity cannot work without being supported by people, and you won't get popular support from people if you create something that they cannot access and they don't have the resources to access. Now, more on this. Before that, Victor, please.
Madam, please make up your mind. On the one hand, only like 10 people are going to afford it, but on the other hand, we're creating a generation of people that don't care about the future. Please choose.
Sure, two scenarios. The one in which only some people will afford it, and we will create oligarchs being empowered and using it, and people not having access to. And in your scenario in which we are living in a happy world of people in which everybody can access, and each and every individual will have this mentality. Two scenarios not very hard to understand. Now, let's talk a little bit about our extension. You know, we say that what you would incentivize, no thank you sir, what you would incentivize throughout this measure is having, what we say, what is our principle, is this: in the moment when you create something that exclusivist, that only a few people can afford, you're not going to have accessibility at the societal level, right? So you're going to have only the people who have a lot of money, which are going to afford this medicine, right? But even if I have explained you before how this would not tackle, how this would change the perspective of quality of life and won't make people more responsible. But on our principles, we say that even if she answered to the POI in which she says that it is better to have 5 dictators than to have one that rules, we say that this remains a pretty important point. How precisely? Because in the moment when you give leverage to a dictator in a country that he has seated for 20 years to freeze his aging in order to remain in power, that particular dictator in countries such as Zimbabwe, for example, or countries such as North Korea, will know how the population reacts to stimulus, and the population is submissive and won't have the possibility to do anything in order to change his position of power. And what is going to happen in that moment, it is that they're going to use that medicine, right? They're going to use that in their interest, and what they're going to do is going to create a vicious circle in which they rule that country without letting anybody else do it, with all the past experience that they have had, and all this past experience creating upon themselves an image that remains unbeatable by anybody, even by age. But even if that was not true, let's talk a little bit about the state of bliss. What we say throughout the state of bliss, that you cannot achieve happiness that has no limits, and you cannot achieve a person that has no desires, right? So even in the scenario in which we would achieve this measure, in their scenario in which everybody would be happy and would live long, in this scenario what we say is people will desire for more. People won't be satisfied even with this measure, and they will want more and more, and their happiness won't be the one that they want to portray as being untouchable and unbeatable. It is more than this. We say that you are creating a one-way ticket, you are creating a decision that was not made autonomously, but was made by a cumulus of stimulus that hadn't created a free choice. So for all of these reasons, because we say that these scientists won't be happy in any way, and it's just going to become a puppeteer and a person that won't value human rights, because of the fact that they will use it as a political tool by the pharmaceutical companies and by governments. We beg of you to...
1 second. Okay. May I? Okay. So it's funny that when we see a motion, we start looking at the words of the motion, intending to find arguments related to each and every word. But what happens when we look at all the words and still we're unable to assess the identity, the true identity of the agent that we're discussing today? We argue in closing opposition that the scientist is not merely one person, but part of a community of scientists, part of a community of human beings who need not only to think of themselves, but they need to put their subjectivity in order to have better outcomes for the entire society. This is what we're going to extend to many points: moral framework first, and preservation of brilliant minds. Next, how we diminish social inequality and other things. But before this, 2 points of direct rebuttal. Firstly, on their point of dictators. Sadly for them, dictators in both scenarios don't die of old age. Like, I'm sorry, Robert Mugabe is 92 years old and he's quite dying of cancer. He will die of cancer in both scenarios. The motion doesn't change the fact that I don't know any dictator that died from old age. This is just bad luck for those countries. But more than this, the last point on extension was you will become a puppet of a government that will engineer society in order to do some bad things. This rhetoric might be applied by conservative people to any kind of medicine ever invented in our society. We say that the fact that we have better outcomes in our society means that if one individual is able to better his life, to self-actualize himself in a better way, this individual should be able to have access to that specific medicine. Now, moving to my extension, moral framework. And we say that the scientist is not an individual who asks himself, should I do it or should I not do it? The scientist is a smart person who asks himself, am I able to assess the outcomes better than the state and the scientific community is able to assess the outcomes of this policy? So let's look at who's able on a comparative to better assess the outcomes. And let's take the worst case scenario for closing opposition. The case in which the scientist takes for granted that his subjective perspective is very, very important. Let's analyze why subjective experience of life can be so important. We say that life is important because it is a unique experience. But not only a unique experience, it is the unique experience. So in the moment in which a scientist takes for granted the idea that we need to take into account subjective experience, he's not anymore able to say only my subjective experience matters, because each and every experience of each and every individual is different. So from the perspective of a people who wants to serve society, I understand that each and every individual should be able to choose for himself, because this is how real subjectivity functions in our society. But let's take the second possibility, in which the scientist prefers an objective analyzing of the situations. We say that the only objective institution or quasi-objective institution is the state. We're not, on closing opposition and on opposition, we should not defend corporate profits or spending that is, I know, creates direct inequality. We only think that the government should be able to regulate this kind of cures and use it in order to better the needs of the society. So we're saying that in the actual context of 2015, in which we're nationalizing all private healthcare in the world, and we're trying to nationalize pharmaceutical companies, the governments are agents that are willing to help the society and are willing to do it because this is how governments function. So from the perspective of a scientist, even if you're subjective or objective, the state is able, or the plethora of people are better to make a better decision than you, so you should not do it by yourself. Opening opposition touched on this. Great. Now, moving on benefits. Firstly, let's deal with the most important part of opposition's case, and namely inequality. The real problem that Opti and closing government has is that they really don't understand how social inequality functions. We say that if we're able to prove that productivity increases on our side of the house, redistribution, be it bad or good, will make sure that even people who do not access this kind of cure will have more money because productivity grows, therefore wealth grows. We say on closing opposition that, one, people who will be able to access this kind of medication, this kind of cure, are people from the upper middle class. We say that the pillars of economy are the upper middle class. Therefore, when you empower upper middle class to become more effective and productive agents of the society, you enhance the capacity of the country to produce wealth. When you enhance the capacity of countries to produce wealth, you enhance its capacity to redistribute wealth to those who may be in need. Georgia.
The fact is, even though the middle class might be tempted to work harder in order to achieve that medicine, it won't be able to achieve that medicine because there will be a group of individuals holding enough power so that they will live more and more.
One, they will die, but two, we believe that the government will provide directive incentives to upper middle class. That's a fine policy that the government might take. Now, next, we believe that a very important element, this is key, is preservation of brilliant minds. We believe that one of the biggest problems of society is that brilliant people who create something important for the society aren't there enough in order to show that their work is really good, that it works, and that has good outcomes for the world. In 1929, Mr. John Maynard Keynes created a revolutionary theory that for 1 century after that was neglected because it was considered futile by the economists of the next generation. We say that nowadays we understand that Keynesian fiscal stimulus was good, but we need a century in order to discover this. We say that if we would have prolonged the life of John Maynard Keynes for 3 years, in order for us to understand how exactly Keynesianism was the thing that made the economy brilliant again, we would now be a better economy because we would be able to implement specific policies that were deemed to be good, but we didn't understand them because we couldn't associate themselves with a face that could recognize this. We say that the scientist is an individual who believes that we need to take into account what a society needs because they made the pledge to society. We believe that brilliant scientists are create great outcomes for the society, and this is why scientists should encourage their lifespan. Next, we believe that in the case of terminal illness, people will not die because of terminal illness, but we say that one factor that enhances terminal illness is aging. In the moment in which you discover that you might have cancer, you might get this medicine, you will prolong your age, your youth, and you will be able to find a cure while you're still young, while you are not deemed as being as incurable right now. Panel. On this side of the house, on closing opposition, we were the first team that engaged with sciences as parts of a community. And we've shown you that even if it's subjective or objective, better outcomes appear in the moment in which scientists let this pill exist. I'm so proud to oppose it.
Mr. and Madam Speaker, before going into my four points about availability, morality, responsibility, and paranoia, I'm going to direct clash with what closing opposition brought up today. Now, firstly, come and give us two perspectives from which the scientists might see this discovery of the magical formula of forever freezing your agent. Now, first perspective that they give is subjective. What we say is that in the moment in which such a scientist is subjective and is following his own interest, which might mean financial interest, because he has put a lot of effort, a lot of time, a lot of resources in finding that specific cure, because he is subjective, he will want to have a lot of profit out of that. We believe that in the moment in which a scientist finds such a great amount of power in his hands, he will want to put a big price on it, because he knows that the society is dependent on him, and he knows that people are going to come at him and want his magical formula. We say that in the moment in which the scientist is subjective, he is going to put a higher price on the respective medicine, and therefore it will be even less accessible for the people. If he would look at it as an objective thing, as the greater good for the population, and not putting his own interest on the first place, what we would say is that government, and the fact that governments will regulate this and redistribution of wealth and everyone will have access to it, well, what we're saying is that the scientist, is going to become one of the puppets of the government. No, thank you. Well, what we say is that it's a very bad thing, because in that moment, corporate interests and government interests are going to be the one that are going to rule the distribution of this magical formula, and the governments exclusively having this and regulating this are going to be at their term subjective, because we don't see we haven't heard any kind of analysis whatsoever why the governments actually want more people in their society. Why do they want overpopulation? Why in the context in which we have limited resources? We never heard why that's in the intention of a government, and not just keep it for themselves and have a longer ruling term, right? We say that this is a very likely scenario to happen. No, thank you. Going into the first place about availability. Now, any scientist that would make the least cost-benefit analysis would see that the effort that he has put in all his life in trying to find this cure is not worth just selling it at a very low price on the market. As such, putting patents and really expensive prices on that would make them less available, and would create a global elitism. Global elitism that is highly detrimental for our society. Mr. Speaker, 250,000 people die in developing countries because they take drugs that don't have patents. There are drugs that could be available, but patents are making them not reachable for those people. This is exactly what kind of frustration is going to be gained in the society in the moment in which we are letting scientists do such a thing and not encourage them to destroy it. No. And what we're seeing is that not only CEOs are the bad parts, as the opening government said, but also we have extended a lot on leaders that have proactive plans for the future. Right, maybe Mr. Robert Mugabe will die because he is 93 years old and he is ruling Zimbabwe for a very, very long time. But what we're saying is that we're having a look at North Korea, right? Kim Jong-un is a very healthy young man, that is part of the global elitism. We believe that this kind of cure coming into his hands is going to take away any kind of chance whatsoever for change to happen right there. Second point, morality. And what we're saying is that this formula represents a one-way ticket, and that the people that are wanting to buy this formula or wanting to come and access to it are not deciding on a rational premise. We're saying that from the moral point of view, these people are not acting autonomously. These people are acting to the desire of having power. As such, they're not acting to a law that they give themselves, but moreover to an uncontrollable desire of them. So from a moral point of view, we see that the scientist has not only a responsibility and a duty, but also an obligation from the moral perspective. Yes, madam.
Because patents are for a limited period of time and you don't get continuously money, and then it's produced and redistributed Do you think your argument still stands?
Yes, I do. You know why? Because patents are put in the exactly in the moment in which people know that they're going to make patents because to make money, because they leave that patent right there, because other people cannot, you know, steal their formulas and make other replicas of them, as such, losing the profit that they get. So putting patents on medicine, putting patents and the personal stamp on that respective medicine assures you that you are going to be the only provider of that society. As such, this is highly detrimental unless for the global elitism that is going to be created. Moreover, what we say is not only that these people do not act autonomously, but also the effect that is going to be created is not that really wonderful state of bliss in which people are happy about the fact that they are young, they live a young life. Sure, we conceded the fact that being young for a very, very long time is a great thing, but in the moment in which you reach a state of bliss, that there's going to be an intrinsic need of creating new needs, and new needs such as that can be detrimental for yourself, new needs that can be detrimental for your society. Moreover, we say that it is an intrinsic responsibility of the scientist in the moment in which he has created this formula, in the moment in which his formula not only that will be not accessible for people, but will create harms because the elitist society is going to be the only one that is going to have it. As such, we're transforming a responsibility, a community responsibility, into an obligation because he is the creator and the only provider of this thing. Moreover, what we say is that paranoia and frustration is going to happen. Why? Because people not affording this are going to be afraid. People are going to be afraid of the ones that are forever living, because they are going to see, like, they are going to feel inferior. You're taking the value of life of these people and putting it on the people that actually have financial resources and so on to afford this kind of formula. Mr. Speaker, because it creates a global elitism, and because it's not accessible, but even if it would be accessible, it creates overpopulation and bad harm to the
Mr. Speaker, this is a debate that has to be taken from the perspective of a scientist. A scientist which is no morally perfect robot that is going to take the best decision for humanity and whatsoever. He's a human being with a family, with friends, with desires, who maybe wants glory, maybe wants money. Oh, both opening and closing. Came up and told us, look, he's gonna have a lot of money, he's gonna be the puppeteer of governments and corporations, and he stopped there. Never explaining why being the puppeteer of corporations and governments and having a lot of money is something bad for a human being. We think this was pretty important to do. I mean, they sort of assumed the fact that this scientist would be a fundamentally selfless being that once hates social inequality and has this absolute hatred towards the elites. Now, I'm going to talk in my speech about three things and tackle everything that the government has brought up so far. Firstly, I'm going to talk about the perspective of the scientists, both from the way it was discussed in the first bench, but also from the way in which we brought it up in our extension. Secondly, about the outcomes. What outcomes would the world in general have with this magical medical measure? And thirdly, I'm going to talk about research and dictators and CEOs and all the other points that Prof tried to bring up as additional harms that society would feel from this sort of measure. Now let's look at a scientist perspective. From a personal perspective, I already told you. You get a lot of things, and Prof never explained why those things would generally cause you a worse situation at the end of the day. They told you that you'll be hated by religious groups. Well, newsflash, almost every scientist that invents medicine that prolongs life or does things will be hated by conservative groups that think that medicine is not something that God allows. Yeah, sure, you're gonna go for that, but as opening told you, you're gonna have supporters that's gonna compensate. We don't think this is a relevant part of the debate, since they never explained why that is bad in itself. But let's look at our perspective, right? from the perspective of the community of scientists, right? Now we told you that a decision is better taken when there are more subjective views put into place, right? Because the view of the scientist is subjective, right? But being a smart man, he realizes that he can't take this huge decision, which can change the lives of millions of people, on his own. So he shouldn't be the one to destroy it, and should the accumulated subjective views of the scientific community, of the world in general, would decide that this is something undesirable, then and only then it is legitimate to destroy it. That is what we on closing told you. And we think this is very, very, very important, right? Because taking such a big decision on yourself is something that a scientist should not do. But now, let's talk a little bit about outcomes, right? Because this was a very, very important part of the debate. Now, opening told you that people would live a better life. You can credit them for that, right? They explained, thank you, why this would help people to live a happier life, right? Because they would be young, and that would better their quality of life. We also told you on closing that this would help people which are currently in incurable disease statement, and we would be able to make them young and diminish the effects of these diseases. The use in medicine could be widely ranged, not just for oligarchs to live longer lives. This is a narrowing of the debate on just a slight negative sounding side of it, when we have so many other applications for such a wonderful thing, right? So at the end of the day, from this perspective, well, the rich might be a little bit better. The ones that are not able to afford will live the absolute same life as before. So generally speaking, there's no bad outcome. So we think that the criteria of scientists trying to better human life is totally respected. Furthermore, we told you in our extension that we increase productivity, and that is a bettering and a diminishing of social inequality, which they kept talking about, both benches. Now we tell you that if people are younger and stay younger long, younger people are more productive, right? And a more productive society, and we told you that we're talking specifically about the upper middle class and high class, the pillars of the economy, right? That means that we'll have a more productive economy overall, which produces growth, which produces wealth, which in general betters the life of all the people in society. So even in their perspective, no, we're still bettering the life of poor people in the long run, if that's the criteria they want to set. But opening already told you that's not the criteria to respect to improve science or not, if the poor people will be able to afford it, because on that criteria, we probably wouldn't produce any sort of medicine that is just a bit more expensive than, I don't know, ibuprofen, right? So, furthermore, let's talk about... Yeah, sure.
Do you agree upon the fact that the more powerful the good to be redistributed, the smaller the propensity of the state to actually do the redistribution is?
Well, yeah, that might be true in certain contexts, but we don't really care because the redistribution can happen. No redistribution is perfect, but then again, we think that redistribution is just an added benefit, right? Redistributing this is not a necessary condition for inventing it and putting it on the market. It's just an added benefit, right? However good the redistribution will be, we think it's good we have it, and to the extent to which it will be made, I don't know, but it doesn't really matter when we're talking about science. Now, about the preservation of brilliant minds, this is really important, right? Because with this technique, the world can actually preserve people that can be very, very useful to them, be useful in their younger and very healthy form, because always in times of crisis we wonder what would the great people or great minds would have done, right? I mean, you can see articles in The Economist about what Adam Smith would say about the financial crisis of 2007, and let's analyze from his point of view. Now, Adam Smith lived a long time ago, and we wouldn't be able to plunge his life that much. But the principle remains, right? We think that there are people that are absolutely extraordinary, and human society would benefit so much from preserving them in their younger form, with their minds intact. We think this is very, very important, right? Now we think that they exaggerated all benches of government with the elitist society and the paranoia. We're telling you we're not creating immortals. We're just making people look that they had very good aesthetic surgery and they were on a diet. That's basically it. It's not going to be paranoia or social tensions of any kind. And about research and dictators, right? We told you that research would be tremendously affected by destroying this, because there is a lot of adjacent research towards such a big discovery that can be used in other fields as well. And towards dictators and CEOs, we told you, dictators don't die of old age. Dictators change through revolution. And revolution happens regardless if the guy lives 20 years, 80 years, or 200 years. When the people are too much starved, they're going to revolt, and that's it. It doesn't depend on the lifespan of the dictator. And about CEOs, which was brought up by opening government, CEOs are fired not when they're too old, but when they stop making profit. And that's the end of it. We think that basically we destroyed every single point that proposition brought up. So for all of these reasons, please vote with opposition. Thank you.